This is it. It is here. The camera comparison that could change how we look at smartphone cameras in 2023. Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra versus the S22 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you don't know me yet, I'm Ershad. You're watching Track in Tech English. Let's begin the battle. First, the primary camera on the S23 Ultra has been upgraded. It's a new Samsung ISOCELL 200 megapixel HP2 sensor. Of course, the S22 Ultra had the 108 megapixel HM3 sensor and the iPhone has a new 48 megapixel Sony sensor. The interesting aspect about all these sensors is the sensor size is pretty similar. 1 by 1.28 on the iPhone, 1 by 1.32 on the S23 Ultra and 1 by 1.33 on the S22 Ultra. Right off the bat, the S23 Ultra captures more detail than the S22 Ultra, that's established. But the detail retention capabilities of the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro are largely similar, which is of course particularly true in the second image when you actually close in to see the details. But you know what, if you want more details and sharpness in your images, the 1-inch sensor, the Sony IMX989 used in the Xiaomi 12S Ultra and the Vivo X90 Pro is actually much better. And you know what's also sharp? You people, you guys are very sharp, and if you like the kind of detailed, sharp, incisive videos that we make, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and support us. That said, Samsung does adaptive binning on its 200MP sensor. Apart from the 16:1 pixel binning, which creates 12.5MP outputs, you also get 4:1 pixel binning, with which you can create 50MP outputs. And compared to the 48MP ProRAW image of the iPhone 14 Pro, the S23 Ultra is just so sharp. And you know what? The size of the picture is just about 15.7 MB, and you can actually use 50MP camera in the Pro mode as well. So considering how Samsung utilizes the sensor when it comes to detail and sharpness, I'd give the S23 Ultra a win. Now in scenes with high dynamic range, Samsung does a better job of merging multiple exposures. iPhone always blows out the highlights if there is a bright background, and that's a bit of a letdown. Also, I noticed something about the S22 Ultra. It tends to be tad brighter when shooting HDR pictures and oversaturates as well. For example, the color of the road that you see out here, it's definitely not as red as you see on the S22 Ultra sample. By the way, once again, the sun is blown out in the iPhone, and if you look at the shadow region at the back of the car, Samsung's algorithm has been further improved to reduce the noise. iPhone is clean too, but the algorithm has smoothened out some of the details from the shadows. And even if you look at it overall, the scene is better rendered in the S23 Ultra's picture. Now in this final complex HDR scene in low light, the S23 Ultra does a great job of controlling the bright sources of light. It does it slightly better than the iPhone 14 Pro. The S22 Ultra doesn't match up, and overall when it comes to HDR performance, again the S23 Ultra takes a win. However, the major problem with the S23 Ultra is color rendition, and this is even with scene recognition off. Samsung has a tendency to oversaturate things. The color of the MacBook here has been rendered entirely wrong, and all the other colors out here, like the yellow of the bookmark, the red of the book's title, and the brown of the table, have been almost nearly accurately reproduced by the iPhone 14 Pro. And when you look at the S22 Ultra, it tends to desaturate. In fact, when you go back to the comparison of the car sample that I showed earlier, the metallic sheen of the red, the greens in the leaves, and the blue on the wall, all of that is nearly accurately again reproduced by the iPhone 14 Pro. It's close to what my eyes saw. And if you look at this picture from a bird's eye view, you will notice that Samsung tends to go for a brighter exposure. When you're shooting friends and family, the details on the face are much sharper on the iPhone 14 Pro. The S23 Ultra is second according to me, and it is definitely better than the S22 Ultra. Now the skin tone rendering has improved in the S23 Ultra compared to its predecessor, but the iPhone is definitely closer to neutral. Whether you're shooting a dark skin or a light skin, you can actually trust iPhone's skin tones. But do you know which phones produce the best skin tones across every single phone out there? Yep, you guessed it right. It's the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 7 Pro. Now, even when you're shooting against the light, iPhone maintains the skin tones really well. In portraits, all the three phones use the 3x camera to punch in and take a portrait shot, and that's absolutely right way to do it, because then you get the correct focal length for the face, because then you get the correct face size as well. Now, the edge detection, when you look at all the three samples, it's nearly identical on all three, with Samsung doing slightly better if you ask me. But then again, when you talk about skin tones and details, iPhone takes the lead. All things considered, I would choose the iPhone 14 Pro when shooting friends and family, but I know for a fact that a lot of people will like the look of the S23 Ultra because it gives you a pre-edited image to begin with. Now, in shooting indoors in white light, all these three phones get the color temperature just about right. But the details are sharper on the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro, and the colors are fairly well rendered too, true to, what we noticed with the primary camera in daylight. But the noise control in the shadow region around the corner of the wooden cabinet is much better on the iPhone 14 Pro. You can see it for yourself. However, when I switch to warm light, iPhone always picks the wrong white point. And the S22 Ultra is just too warm. The S23 Ultra is the absolute accurate color temperature out here. Now, Samsung claims huge improvements in low light photography. Let's test that claim out. And I'm happy to report that in this specific comparison, the S23 Ultra pulls in more light, offers more details, and has a better control over the overexposure too. And in iPhone's low light shots, a lot of times the shadows are just way too dark. I think iPhone should have pulled out a few more details from here. And this has been the case ever since the iPhone 14 Pro came out and I've been doing camera comparisons. It hasn't improved at all. Again, in this indoor shot, if you look at it, the S23 Ultra offers you a brighter exposure. In terms of sharpness, the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro are almost equally matched. But what I noticed is that Samsung does aggressive noise correction and therefore smoothens out the details slightly. And I took this specific shot not because I wanted to show the R.K. Lakshman statue, but when you look at the rear, the corridors have lights, bright sources of lights, and the S23 Ultra has managed to control it really well compared to the other two phones. Now talking about ultra wide, so you get a 12 megapixel 120-degree field of view ultra wide angle camera on all the three phones, and what I noticed first up is that the S23 Ultra's ultra wide is sharper than the S22 Ultra now. But in this camera sample, you can see that the iPhone 14 Pro is equally sharp. And when it comes to color science consistency, Apple, Google, and Samsung never miss a beat. They are the gold standards. But when you look at HDR, Samsung's HDR performance is better than iPhone, primarily because you can see how the highlights are blown out in the iPhone sample. Apple really needs to fix it soon. And in low light ultra wide angle shots, the S23 Ultra annihilates the competition. You get a brighter exposure, much sharper details, win-win for S23 Ultra. If you want to do a lot of ultra wide angle photography, S23 Ultra is the phone that you should pick. Now, all the three phones can also go very close to a subject and switch to an auto macro or a focus mode and take close-up macro shots. And even in macro shots, it seems like Samsung's algorithm has improved because you can tell that the S23 Ultra's macro is sharper. It focuses faster as well, especially when you go close to the subject. It's better than the S22 Ultra and slightly better than the iPhone 14 Pro. So Samsung's big advantage has been that it offers better optical zoom photography compared to the iPhone. That continues this year as well. The three phones have a 3x telephoto camera, but the S22 Ultra and the S23 Ultra, like you all know, have a 10x periscope zoom camera. Now comparing the 3x samples first, there is very little difference between the iPhone 14 Pro and the S23 Ultra, but these phones are sharper than the S22 Ultra for sure. But zooming further to 10x periscope zoom, the iPhone 14 Pro's digital zoom is no match for the Samsung's. But between the S23 Ultra and the S22 Ultra, I didn't notice much of an improvement. But this is first time in this whole comparison that it has actually happened that there is no visible improvement in performance on the S23 Ultra compared to the S22 Ultra. But zoom further to 30x and even 100x, I see improved details and sharpness on the S23 Ultra. What do you guys think? Take a look. Even in low light, the telephoto camera performance has been improved on the S23 Ultra. It is the best of the three, no doubt in my mind. Okay, I'm tired of saying this now. Telephoto performance is yet another win for the S23 Ultra out here. But you guys knew that already, didn't you? Now with the new phone, Samsung has actually replaced the 40MP selfie camera for a 12MP one, and Samsung says that it's actually better at photography. In daylight selfies with these three phones, you can tell that all the three are absolutely fantastic for selfies. These selfies are well exposed and sharp, easily the best out there. The only difference I could tell is that both the Samsungs have a slightly warmer skin rendition, but it's definitely not as bad as the primary camera performs. Now talking about warm, you can also switch between a natural look and a warm look depending on what you want from your selfies. But natural is warm to begin with, so I wouldn't see a reason why you would want a warmer look. Taking selfies against the light, the Samsungs perform way better. The S23 Ultra is also a smidgen better than the S22 Ultra, if you ask me, because it's slightly better exposed. And the iPhone, oh well. Portrait edge cutout once again is slightly better on the Samsungs compared to the iPhone, and the portrait shot of the S23 Ultra is really good. I absolutely love it. Further building into the adulation is that Samsung actually maps, features on your face like the hair, the eyes, to make them look sharper when you're actually shooting low light selfies. I mean, take a look at the samples out here. The S22 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro selfies are no match, absolutely no match for S23 Ultra's sharpness and details. But I do have a problem, and that is the AI does aggressive noise correction on my t-shirt, and therefore the details are smoothened out entirely. The iPhone 14 Pro is sharper in that regard. Although I'm okay with that, considering the S23 Ultra does look my face look good. Wink, wink. Finally, let's talk about videography, and I'll skip the S22 Ultra here entirely because inevitably, and I've tested it out, the S23 Ultra and the 14 Pro are better. In 4K 60 FPS video recording, Samsung has definitely improved the stabilization by leaps and bounds. I noticed a brighter exposure and fantastic HDR too. But just like the photo performance, you will notice that colors are highly exaggerated on the Samsung, and sound recording wise, both are equally matched though.
This is what it sounds like, this is what it looks like, and I'll ask Vedant to pan around slightly, and there's a little bit of a sun behind me, and you guys can see what that looks like. This is what it sounds like, this is what it looks like, and I'll ask Vedant to pan around slightly, and there's a little bit of a sun behind me, and you guys can see what that looks like.
Now you can also shoot in super steady mode using the Galaxy, and it's called action mode on the iPhone. When you compare the two, there's absolutely no difference. You can't pick out a winner. The iPhone has a distinctive advantage, and that is cinematic mode. See, the S23 Ultra's portrait video mode is very good at depth mapping, and it matches the iPhone as well. But the iPhone goes one step ahead and does automatic focus shifting when, one of the subjects in the foreground looks at the subject in the background. This kind of automatic switching is just magic. As for the ultra wide angle video, both the videos look very good, but the iPhone has a wider field of view and more accurate colors too. You can also shoot 4K 60 FPS videos using the telephoto camera. Both are equally good. I really cannot pick a winner out here. Front video again is great on both, with great facial tones, great details, and good target exposure lock too. But iPhone offers a wider field of view in selfies, just like it did with the ultra wide angle, and Samsung offers slightly better HDR, so you take the pick of which one you prefer. So let's do this 4K 60 FPS video recording using the front camera on both these phones right now. Let's do this 4K 60 FPS video recording using the front camera on both these phones right now. Low-light videography is something that Samsung has always lacked at. With the S23 Ultra, it's definitely improved. The exposure control is better, the noise levels have reduced, and you can see more details as well. But the iPhone 14 Pro is even better at exposure control. It has far more reduced noise levels and far more details as well. So there is still a little bit to catch up for Samsung. Although on the flip side, when you're shooting with the selfie camera, the ultra-wide, or the telephoto in low light, Samsung does better because generally it offers a brighter exposure and more details too. I did notice a little bit of focus hunting when shooting with the ultra wide angle camera in low light, but that's about it. Otherwise, it's very, very good. Overall, Samsung is definitely bridging the gap, and it's really, really close to the iPhone when it comes to video recording. In certain scenarios, it definitely beats it right away as well. Now, talking about video recording, the Galaxy S23 Ultra also offers 8K 30 FPS video recording now, and that's native 30 FPS. Compared to the S22 Ultra at 8K 24 FPS, you can see the difference for yourself. Also, the expert raw mode is now integrated, and in that integrated expert raw mode, you've got an astrophotography mode with which you can actually see the constellations, line them up and shoot. Stargazers who like to shoot pictures of the night sky will find the S23 Ultra's this specific tool very useful. And when you talk about the expert raw mode, it is absolutely one of the best pro modes out there. From changing light metering to focus peaking, there's just a lot on offer. But there's one particular problem that I really wanted S23 Ultra to fix coming from the S22 Ultra, is that one of shutter lag. Well, in the native camera app, the shutter lag still persists. You cannot really trust the S23 Ultra to take pictures of moving subjects without, getting a blurred one. The iPhone is better at it. However, there is a workaround. Download the GoodLock app, the camera settings module, and from there, you can actually prioritize shooting speeds so it'll shoot faster. Of course, at the loss of a few details. That's something that you have to keep in mind. So one thing certain, the S23 Ultra takes better pictures, is far more improved than the S22 Ultra. I know you guys wanted a camera comparison with the Pixel 7 Pro. That one's coming really soon as well, so stay tuned. The only reason why I'd pick the iPhone 14 Pro over the S23 Ultra is for sometimes shooting videos. Of course, video performance has improved with the S23 Ultra, but the iPhone 14 Pro is still the leader, and especially for shooting pictures of people because it captures natural skin tones. But when it comes to HDR, ultra wide, selfies, telephoto, low light, S23 Ultra wins. So I'm saying it outright, the S23 Ultra is a better camera phone compared to the iPhone 14 Pro. But I sincerely hope Samsung improves the skin tones and the color accuracy in the future. Then there's no catching this brand. So what did you guys think of this camera comparison? Let me know in the comment section below. Which one did you prefer? I'd love to know that as well. Until next time, this is Ashad signing off. Keep tracking and stay safe.